The story of the Ford Model T is not just the story of a car, it is the story of a revolution, a transformation that reshaped not only the automobile industry, but the very fabric of human society. Before its arrival, cars were rare, expensive, and almost mythical machines that only the wealthy could afford. They were handcrafted, delicate, and more of a luxury toy than a practical tool. But everything changed in the early 20th century, when one man dared to imagine a world where ordinary people could own a car. That man was Henry Ford. In the early 1900s, transportation was limited. Most people relied on horses, bicycles, or walking to get from one place to another. Cities were crowded, roads were rough, and long-distance travel was a challenge. Automobiles existed, but they were incredibly expensive and unreliable. Only the elite could afford them, and even then, maintaining a car required specialized knowledge and constant attention. Henry Ford saw this problem not as a limitation, but as an opportunity. He envisioned a car that was simple, durable, affordable, and accessible to the masses. A car that could change lives. In 1908, that vision became reality with the introduction of the Ford Model T. It wasn't the first car ever made, but it was the first car designed for everyone. From the very beginning, the Model T stood apart from its competitors. It was built with practicality in mind. Its design was simple yet effective, and its construction focused on durability. The car could handle rough roads, harsh weather, and long journeys with ease. It was not a machine for show, it was a machine for life. What truly set the Model T apart, however, was how it was produced. Before this car, automobiles were built individually, often by skilled craftsmen working by hand. This process was slow and expensive, which made cars unaffordable for most people. Henry Ford introduced a groundbreaking concept, the moving assembly line. Instead of building one car at a time, workers would stay in one place while the car moved along a conveyor system. Each worker performed a specific task, and together they built the car step by step. This innovation changed everything. Production became faster, more efficient, and significantly cheaper. What once took more than 12 hours to build could now be completed in just about 90 minutes. As a result, the cost of the Model T dropped dramatically. In 1908, it was priced at around $850, which was already lower than most cars at the time. But as production improved, the price continued to fall, eventually reaching as low as $260. For the first time in history, a car was within reach of the average working person. The impact of the Model T was immediate and profound. People who had never imagined owning a car suddenly found themselves behind the wheel. Families could travel farther and faster than ever before. Farmers could transport goods to market more efficiently. Workers could live farther from their jobs, leading to the growth of suburbs. The world was becoming more connected, and the Model T was at the center of it all. Driving a Model T was a unique experience. Unlike modern cars, it didn't have a standard accelerator pedal or gear system. Instead, it used a series of levers and pedals that required some learning to master. But once understood, it was surprisingly easy to operate. The car's high ground clearance made it ideal for rough, rural roads, and its lightweight design allowed it to navigate challenging terrain. It was often said that the Model T could go anywhere a horse could go, and sometimes even farther. The engine of the Model T was another key factor in its success. It was simple, reliable, and easy to repair. Owners didn't need to be expert mechanics to keep their cars running. In fact, many Model T owners learned how to fix their cars themselves, using basic tools and a bit of ingenuity. This self-reliance became part of the Model T's identity. It wasn't just a car you owned, it was a car you understood. One of the most famous aspects of the Model T was its color. Henry Ford once famously said that customers could have the car in any color they wanted, as long as it was black. While this statement was somewhat exaggerated, It reflected Ford's focus on efficiency. Black paint dried faster than other colors, which sped up production and reduced costs. This decision allowed Ford to produce more cars in less time, further lowering the price and increasing accessibility. As the years went by, the Model T became more than just a car. It became a symbol of progress, innovation, and possibility. It represented a shift from a world of limitations to a world of opportunity. Roads began to improve as more cars appeared. Gas stations, repair shops, and motels started to emerge. Entire industries grew around the automobile, creating jobs and driving economic growth. By the 1920s, the Model T was everywhere. It dominated the roads and became a common sight in both cities and rural areas. At its peak, more than half of all cars in the world were Model Ts. It was not just popular, it was universal. People from all walks of life embraced it. It didn't matter if you were a farmer, a factory worker, or a businessman. The Model T was for you. But with success came challenges. As time went on, competitors began to catch up. Other car manufacturers started to introduce new features, improved designs, and more variety. Consumers began to demand more comfort, more style, and more options. The Model T, with its simple design and limited customization, began to feel outdated. Henry Ford was initially resistant to change. He believed in the original vision of the Model T and was slow to adapt to shifting market demands. Eventually, however, it became clear that change was necessary. In 1927, after nearly 2 decades of production, the Model T was discontinued and replaced by the Ford Model A. By that time, over 15 million Model Ts had been produced. It was an unprecedented achievement and a record that stood for decades. The legacy of the Model T was firmly established. Even today, more than a century later, the impact of the Model T can still be felt. It laid the foundation for modern manufacturing techniques and demonstrated the power of mass production. It showed that innovation could make life better for everyone, not just a privileged few. It changed how people lived, worked, and traveled. It brought the world closer together. Collectors and enthusiasts around the world continue to preserve and celebrate the Model T. Restored models can still be seen at car shows, museums, and vintage rallies. Each one tells a story, not just of a machine, but of a moment in history when everything changed. Owning a Model T today is like owning a piece of that transformation. It is a reminder of how far we've come and how one idea can shape the future. The Model T also had a cultural impact. It appeared in films, literature, and art, becoming an icon of its time. It represented freedom and independence. For many people, it was their first experience with personal mobility. It allowed them to explore, to travel, and to connect with the world in ways that were previously impossible. It wasn't just a car, it was a gateway to new possibilities. Henry Ford's vision extended beyond just building a car. He believed in creating a system that benefited both workers and consumers. He introduced higher wages for factory workers, allowing them to afford the very cars they were building. This approach not only improved productivity, but also strengthened the economy. It was a revolutionary idea that influenced labor practices around the world. The assembly line, which was perfected during the production of the Model T, remains one of the most significant innovations in industrial history. It transformed manufacturing across multiple industries, from electronics to clothing. The principles of efficiency, specialization, and standardization continue to shape how products are made today. All of this can be traced back to the Model T. Despite its simplicity, the Model T was incredibly versatile. It could be modified for various uses, from farming to delivery to emergency services. Some owners even converted their cars into makeshift tractors or snow vehicles. This adaptability made it even more valuable, especially in rural areas where resources were limited. It was not just a car, it was a tool. Over time, the Model T became a symbol of resilience. It was known for its ability to keep going under tough conditions. Stories of Model Ts surviving harsh environments, crossing difficult terrains, and enduring years of use became part of its legend. It earned a reputation as a car that could be trusted, a quality that remains essential in automobiles today. As we look back at the history of the Ford Model T, it becomes clear that its significance goes far beyond its mechanical features. It was a catalyst for change. It challenged the status quo and redefined what was possible. It brought innovation to the masses and proved that technology could be both powerful and accessible. In a world where cars are now filled with advanced technology, it's easy to forget the simplicity and ingenuity of the Model T, but its legacy lives on in every vehicle on the road today. Every time we start an engine, take a drive, or rely on a car for our daily lives, we are experiencing the impact of what Henry Ford created over a century ago. The Ford Model T was not just a product of its time, it was ahead of its time. It anticipated a future where mobility was a basic part of life. It laid the groundwork for a connected world. And most importantly, it proved that great ideas have the power to change everything. And that is why, even today, the Ford Model T is remembered not just as a car, but as the car that put the world on wheels.